This is a story of my FJ Holden. Way back in '48, when the 48215 was released onto the market, my grandmother said, "I'm sick of second-hand cars, I'm going to save up and buy a new Holden." So away she went, started saving up her money, and by the time she had the full price saved up, which kept going up every year because Holden couldn't make enough of them, the demand was so high, they just whacked the price up every year. So eventually she had the money and she placed her order. She ordered a green on green standard sedan. Waited patiently for 6 months, then came the news that the FJ was ready. The dealership called her to say that the FJ was being carefully driven up from Fisherman's Bend all the way out to Western District, Victoria, and they would be able to come in and have a look. So when the car arrived, they came in to have a look at it, and the green on green standard FJ sedan they ordered was a cream with red interior. And back in those days, you had to take what you could get. If you didn't want it, someone else would have had it. So they ended up with cream and red. Well, even then, they still couldn't take it home, even though it was their car. The dealership said, "Sorry, Mrs. Dunstan, the annual show's on in town, and we've got a stand there, and we're putting your FJ on display," as it was the first one in the district. So they had to wait nearly another week before they finally got hold of their FJ Holden. One thing I remember from when I was very young, might be family folklore, but I remember hearing or being told that apparently my grandfather drove it into a lake when it was 6 weeks old. And I recently asked my aunt about that, what she remembered of that, and she sort of thought about it. She said, "Oh, I do remember something about him running it into a ditch when it was pretty new, so maybe it got embellished a bit over the years, not really sure." I'm pretty sure the FJ was a November '54 model, and that's about when they got it too. They had it in time for Christmas. And in '55, I was born, and I was born at the Geelong Hospital in Victoria, and I was collected from the hospital by my father and grandparents in that FJ Holden. So that was the first vehicle I ever travelled in. So how many of us can say they've got the vehicle they first travelled in? So that's a bit of fun, and I really enjoy that. Well, moving on another 15 years, it's 1970, and my grandparents were living in Geelong, and my grandfather retired. He worked out at Pilkington Glass. He was there for many years and retired at 65. My father was keen to get him off the road at that stage. He thought he shouldn't be driving anymore. He wasn't all that great of a driver, especially around cities. And so as soon as he retired, my father parked the FJ in the garage, took the plates off and handed them in. So that was the end of my grandfather's driving, which he didn't make too much of a fuss about, so that was okay. I thought this was a great opportunity for me, so I went into my grandmother. I was 15. I went into my grandmother and said, "I'd like to buy the FJ Holden from you. I've got $15. Will that be okay?" She just looked at me and laughed and said, "Don't worry about that. You can have it. It's yours." So I was thrilled. And but there it sat for many years. I had finished school, went away for work, all the usual life stuff, and it was about 1984, about 14 years later, that got the opportunity to start doing something with it. So I've got a couple of photos of how it came out of that garage, having sat there for many years, and for most of that time that garage was open to the weather at the front, so it knocked the front of the vehicle around a bit, quite a bit more rust than it should have had. The car itself was pretty rusty anyway from all those years in the Western District near salt lakes and gravel and dirt roads and all the usual sort of stuff, so it was a pretty rusty car. Probably not the car back then that you would have restored. It would have been sold off for parts, but had a special family connection, so I decided to get in and do some work on it. So got the FJ out of the garage, or shed, more than a garage, gave it a good clean up, put it onto a trailer and trailered it up to Melbourne. At that time I was working out of a pavilion number 5 at the Royal Melbourne Showgrounds, and down in the back corner was a nice space to put the FJ to strip it all down. So set it all up there, curtained it off out of the way. Also, I realised I'd need a lot of parts, so I made a few trips up to Res Fairs in the earlier days, and pricing up parts and availability and all that sort of thing, and chatted there with Lance and told him what I was doing, and got to know each other. And he said, well, tell you what, I've got all, me and mate, we've got all the gear. If you like one Saturday afternoon, we'll come down there and strip it all down for you. We'll do it in the day, and it's something that would take you ages. We can do it pretty quickly. So we went ahead and did that, Lance and Bob, and true to word, had it all stripped down to the shell in the afternoon and saved me a huge amount of work. So with the FJ all stripped down, it's time to get some body work done, and there was so much work needed, way beyond what I was capable of or had the time to do. So got on the trailer again and out to Style Rod Panels out in the southeastern suburbs of Melbourne, who were recommended to me, and they did a terrific job. Floors, sills, a lot of work on panels. It was a big job, and they did a terrific job. And I'll put a few photos in that I took at the time. Once they'd finished all the panel work, we decided that they were painted in two-pack or two-part, I think they called it back then. And they put the primer on, and the plan was for me to take it home and wet sand it back, ready to go back to them to do the painting, see if I could save myself a little bit of money. Well, life got in the way again, and we got no further with it for 30-something years. It sat down at my aunt's in a lean-to, covered in a lean-to,